Hey fellow issues, welcome back to the channel. Today is episode 4 of Death of a Powerhouse. So if you're new to the channel or new to the story, what I've done is I've taken some old dead words and put them into a current news event. Now the previous episodes of this series are also out, and I've also done videos on the meanings of these old words. So just to make it a little bit more fun so you're not completely lost. So if you are completely lost right now, you can go back and watch those previous videos, and that will help you understand what's going on here. So today we're going to talk about orbit, not like in space shuttle orbit, but the area around a certain person. All right, let's get started. And I noticed in my last couple episodes that you could hear my paper wrinkling and stuff, so I will try not to do that this time. People often assume the most dangerous thing in a murder investigation is the killer. I used to think so myself. Then I met enough snollygasters, eye servants, and professional honeyfugglers to understand that sometimes the truly dangerous thing is the crowd gathered around the truth, all of them determined to keep it from seeing daylight. A month or so after Charlene's murder, I found myself sitting alone in my office long after midnight, surrounded by enough paperwork to furnish a modest landfill. Financial disclosures covered the desk. News articles occupied the chairs. Handwritten notes had migrated across the floor like some invasive species. The room smelled faintly of coffee, printer toner, and what I can only describe as intellectual fogo. The average person would have thrown the whole pile away. The average person, however, had not just watched his oldest friend get murdered. What troubled me most wasn't the evidence I couldn't see. By then I had become accustomed to locked doors, sealed files, and bureaucratic fandangles designed to make simple questions sound unreasonable. What troubled me was how often the same names appeared whenever I followed a trail. At first, I assumed it was a coincidence, mayhap even laziness on my part. Yet every time I looked into a consultant, a donor, a policy advisor, or a media personality, I discovered another connection, then another, then another. They appeared and reappeared like actors changing costumes between scenes. A foundation director would somehow sit on the board of an international development group. A development group would fund research produced by a think tank. A think tank would employ a commentator who regularly appeared on broadcast with Griff King. Griff would then interview a government spokesman promoting policies that benefited investors connected to the same network. Round and round it went, an orbit. Not necessarily a conspiracy, an orbit. The distinction matters. Conspiracies require competence. Human beings rarely possess that much of it. Orbits simply happen when enough ambitious people discover they benefit from moving in the same direction. One evening, I met with a former Veritas Meridian employee who agreed to speak on the condition that I never reveal his name. The poor fellow looked quanked before we even sat down. He kept glancing over his shoulder and fidgeting with his coffee cup as though expecting a dogberry or two to emerge from the potted plants and accuse him of dangerous thinking. After a few minutes of nervous causerie, he finally said something that changed the entire direction of my investigation. "You're asking the wrong question." I leaned forward. "What question should I be asking?" He stared into his coffee. "You keep asking who wanted Charlene dead. And? You should be asking why Charlene started changing her mind." Now that got my attention because until then, I had viewed Charlene as a victim. The source viewed her as a problem for somebody. The difference was enormous. According to him, Charlene spent most of her career trusting the people around her, not blindly, and Charlene wasn't Buttons. She wasn't some moon-eyed flapdoodle wandering through life, believing every kickshaw presented at the board meeting. She was intelligent, disciplined, and successful. But she also believed most people were fundamentally trying to do the right thing. That belief, I was beginning to suspect, had limits. About a year before her death, Charlene started requesting additional financial reviews. Nothing dramatic at first, question here, a report there. Then she requested older records. Then comparisons between projects. Then explanations for discrepancies. The source laughed softly. People became nervous. Why? Because she kept paying attention. There is a modern disease far more dangerous than ignorance. Aprosexia, the inability to pay attention. Entire industries depend upon it. Media organizations depend upon it. Politicians depend upon it. Corporations absolutely depend upon it. Most people glance. Charlene started looking. That was the difference. The source told me she became increasingly concerned about foreign investments connected to Velcrane. Publicly, the arrangement sounded splendiferous. Humanitarian partnerships, development initiatives, democratic reforms. Every proposal arrived wrapped in language so noble and uplifting that criticizing it made you look like a liver-faced villain from a melodrama. Yet Charlene kept asking where the money actually went. And nobody seemed eager to answer. Not directly. There was always another report, another committee, another consultant, another polished presentation full of charts and bump fodder. Whenever a straightforward question appeared, somebody would arrive with enough tortiloquy to bury it beneath 3 hours of explanation. The source finally leaned across the table. You know what bothered her most? What? She started realizing the people making the most money were rarely the people being helped. That statement followed me home. It followed me into my office. It followed me through an entire week of broadcasts. And nowhere did it follow me more persistently than when I watched Griff King. Now, Griff possessed a remarkable gift. The man could transform almost any controversy into a pleasant causerie. While lesser broadcasters resorted to hysteria, Griff maintained a kind of practice ataraxia that audiences found reassuring. At first. Eventually, I noticed something. Every difficult subject became softer around Griff. Every contradiction became more complicated. Every concern became less urgent. By the end of an interview, viewers felt informed despite having learned almost nothing. It was Pecksniffian in the extreme. Not overtly dishonest. Far more dangerous than that. Comfortingly dishonest. Jake Fife sat beside him, nodding through the entire performance like a desperate snool, seeking approval from the smartest boy in class. The poor man looked ramfeasled, and every time a guest raised an uncomfortable question, Jake would hector them with demands for proof, while simultaneously defending institutions that refused to release any. The contradiction never seemed to trouble him. Then again, self-awareness has never been a requirement for broadcasting. By the end of that week, I found myself staring at a wall covered in notes and photographs, names connected to names, organizations connected to organizations, relationships stretching in every direction. The entire thing resembled less a murder investigation than a map of influence, an orbit. And right in the middle of it sat Charlene. Not because she created it, because she had finally started noticing it. What I didn't know then was that Charlene had left behind more than questions. She had left behind text messages, and those messages would soon reveal that she had been worried for far longer than anyone had realized. Well, that's the end of episode 4. I appreciate you tuning in, and I want to ask you a question. How should I end this? I'm very undecided. There's a lot of creepy people in the story. I'm not really sure what I should do. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments. Who do you think the real bad guy or bad people should be in the story? That's all I have for you today. I will see you next time for episode 5 of Death of a Powerhouse.